Welcome back to Everything Money. We're happy you joined us again. As always, my name is Seth. Actually, if this is the first time you've ever seen us, welcome. We're glad to have you. I'm here with Paul and Mo. One of the topics we put out just a couple weeks ago, last week, Paul, was about inflation. Inflation is a very, inflation in the minimum wage is a very, it's very talked about. It's somewhat controversial.
Is it controversial?
I would say so, because as we talked about on the last episode, is that I grew up somewhat liberally based, thinking that this minimum wage always has to go up and up and up and up.
And it helps people. You were taught it helps people.
It does help people. And I never got the...
Well, you were taught.
You were taught it helps people.
That's right. I never heard from the horse's mouth someone like yourself who's owned 20 businesses over the past 20 years and owns multiple businesses right now about what the ramifications of government forcing minimum wage increases or willingly increases, but willingly increasing minimum wage and what it can do to inflation, what it can do to the product you're selling. But you were a little tickled, Paul, to send over an article a couple days ago, which you should probably pull up and read.
We talked about this. And remember, I want to make note, I am only anti-minimum wage because I believe anybody should be willing to work for however much money they want to. To me, a minimum wage takes people out of the market that'd be willing to work for less money. Am I opposed to inflation? No. Am I opposed to minimum wage? I'm opposed to what people perceive minimum wage to do and what it actually does. It does not actually raise quality of life. It doesn't because of things like this. And this is not just a fluke. Somebody might sit there and say, oh, it only happened. It happens all across the board, including our businesses. After increasing wages, Chipotle will increase prices on burritos. For those of you who are shocked by that, they're increasing their prices by 4%. You can't be shocked about it. This is a reality. When costs go up in a company and they have investors to answer to and capital they've invested, they want to secure their they want to make their capital much, much safer. How do they do that? Increase prices.
Now, in our last video, Paul, I just said, well, why don't the big wigs who own Chipotle just take a little less money and then they don't have...
Who are the big wigs that own Chipotle?
I'm just asking. I mean, that's what normal people think. What?
You people.
What do you mean?
You all have mutual funds and ETFs. You're the owners of Chipotle. So if you're okay with Chipotle stock falling by 80% because they just make a lot less money over the next 10 years, okay, great.
Oh, I see. I own Chipotle.
Yeah, you own Chipotle. And by the way, same as a business. If you work for a private business, great. Then you will lose your job eventually. Because eventually your owner is going to say, I don't make enough money to justify my risk. I got to let people go. So it's either employ less people or, that's the thing. It's always a give or take. There's no just solution to it all. Just like paying somebody $0 an hour wouldn't work long term. Paying somebody $100 an hour, paying minimum wage $100 an hour wouldn't work long term. I do think zero is better because it allows people to say, you know what? I'm just a guy who just wants to work for fun. I'm fine making $5 an hour. Just give it to me because I'm going to go sweep floors or sweep. In Columbus, we used to pay $10 an hour for a groundskeeper. That was considered well. Now it's $15 an hour. That happened in the last 2 years. Today I was having a meeting with my manager, Mary. I said, Mary, I want to get a guardhouse built at one of our properties and have a 24-hour security guard. We'll pay them $20 an hour. And she goes, yeah, that's not going to happen. I was like, what? She's like, oh, yeah, 2 years ago we could have done that. Not going to happen. We got to pay $25 an hour. I was like, why? She's like, well, Paul, we pay a groundskeeper $15. You think somebody's going to come work for $20 an hour, sit in a gatehouse? I'm like, actually, it sounds easier than a groundskeeper.
Way easier than a groundskeeper.
But she said, no, but somebody's going to be there at night. It's 24 hours. You got to pay more.
Yeah.
But that's what it does. A minimum wage increase lifts everybody's wages, which you might sit there and say, great. But then all of a sudden, all your costs increase, and all of a sudden, everything across the board, look what happened here. CPI was just announced this morning, 5% year over year in May. The last time that happened, August of 2008, when we had oil prices through the roof. The last time it happened before then, 1991.
Slow down a bit. Can you re-say everything you just said because I didn't follow?
5% increase in CPI in the last 1 year was just announced today.
What is CPI?
Consumer Price Index is basically what we look at for inflation. The last time that happened was August of 2008 when we had oil at $140 a barrel. Okay? The last time it happened before that was 1991. If you remember then, I don't know if this is the reason, we went to war in the Gulf and oil prices skyrocketed again. Now the difference is when you have commodity prices that change things quickly, those can go back down and make CPI go back down, everything's normal. But when you have wage increases, if I hired, let's say we have Nate here, our intern. I said, Nate, I'm gonna pay you $10 an hour. And he says, okay, but my costs have gone up. Okay, Nate, we're gonna pay you $15 an hour. All of a sudden, costs go back down. Do I go to Nate and say, Nate, I'm paying you $10 an hour now?
No.
No, it's a permanent increase. He's making $15 an hour as his minimum the rest of his life. I'm okay with this. But I don't want you out there to think that just because wages go up, everybody's living better. It's not the case.
Now, let me bring you the opposite end of this thought process, Paul.
hear it.
As I had a fairly liberal-thinking friend who just posted, can you believe that they're blaming raising minimum wage on this new Chipotle price increase, and shared an article entitled Chipotle's bosses, this is from 2 months ago, Chipotle's bosses get an extra $64 million from tweak to results. So basically it says Chipotle's 5 most senior executives received an additional $64 million of awards last year after the company's boards tweaked bonus calculations to exclude abysmal sales from the first few months of the pandemic lockdown. So basically, they're saying that they're sending $64 million into the hands of the 5 most wealthiest owners of Chipotle.
How many employees are at Chipotle? 65,000. How much did they increase their wages by?
65 million. I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, sorry.
The employees.
4%.
No, that was the.
I don't know what I don't know what they were paying before as their average.
Let's say conservatively,
10?
$3 an hour.
Okay.
That is $200,000 per hour. How many hours a day are they open?
Oh, wow. 10, 12?
No, how many hours a day is the average worker working?
8.
8?
No, I don't think it's 8. I think it's gonna be less than that because there are
5.
probably a lot of part-time workers. Let's say it's
5.
4.
Okay.
That's $800,000 a day
Oh, boy, I see.
times 365. How much money is that? $320 million, right? $320 million. What's bigger, 320 million or 65 million?
I thought the number would be even, the difference would be greater, but that still is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, but guess what? Also, I'm assuming only $4 an hour a day of working. Guys, I get it. And they're right for saying that, but what they're doing is saying, no, it's all these rich guys. But the other thing is, I'm gonna sit there and say, guys, then you go get their job. You go get the 64 million bucks.
Well, that's just it, Paul. I guess I have really learned over the past 2 years is I guess the natural thing is to say, I can't do that, but you actually can in this
And by the way,
world.
have you been to a Chipotle and asked the manager there, which I have, how hard is it to find good employees? Awful. They're like, this is terrible. They're like, it's absolutely terrible. We cannot get people to show up. We can't do this. Go to your next Chipotle and ask the manager how easy it is to hire people who are going to show up. They're going to tell you exactly what it is. It's terrible. I have a friend of mine, Darnell Sanders, played in the NFL for 4 years, owns a tree service business, right? He pays an average wage of $23 an hour. He has to drive in the morning to wake up some of his employees just to get out of bed.
He will literally drive to their house and knock on their door to get them to come
get them
to
out of
work.
bed. And they'll come out like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And this is not a one-time occurrence. This is over and over and over again. I'm not saying this is making a class warfare thing, but I'm just trying to sit there and say 320 million versus 65. Is this a factor? Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. It's not. And by the way, I don't believe in boards saying, oh, you didn't hit your bonus, let's just lower the standard for the bonus. I do not agree with that at all. But I do hate it when people sit there and say, no, it's this. I'm sorry. I don't want to get another political conversation, but back when I went to college at University of Michigan, they would blame, there was a lot of things, anyways, 320 million versus 65 million. This is 5 times more.
The CEO of Chipotle, Brian Niccol, last year got paid $38 million.
Good for him.
I think the take home would be
good for him. Guess what? How did the stock price do last year?
Yeah, it did.
How did the stock price do last year?
If you look at what it did in the last,
how did the stock price do last year? In 2 years, in 3 years? I mean, come on, guys. These are insane. By the way, I don't believe they should be paid on stock price going up.
No.
But that's not the point. You can't sit there and they do well for investors, which, by the way, a lot of average people are invested in them and don't realize it.
Sure.
Give me a break. Look at this chart over here of Mo.
This thing went from like $500 to over $1,500, and now it's about $1,300.
Is that worth 32? Is that worth 30? Is that worth $38 million to me?
Yeah, you're not complaining about that.
Yeah, you're not complaining about your portfolio
your
being
money
up.
going up. Yeah.
Guys, I get it. We talk about this stuff, and it's now becoming. This is what I don't like the minimum wage conversation. It's a class warfare thing.
Let me slow you down. That is very eye-opening. The fact that this guy got paid $38 million to take this company to do the right things, so that this stock price damn near triples. And if I owned a ton of it, I would have also made a ton of money on this.
Yeah, now
and I would not have complained for a second.
You do own a part of it in some way. Do you have an ETF that's S&P 500 based?
Yes.
Then you own a part of Chipotle.
And I'm not complaining at all. I'm like thanking the world. Go ahead, Mo.
Now, if the price was up here and it went down to here, maybe you can complain a little bit more. But that's not what happened. You
is not what
were
happened.
rewarded for what he was doing leading.
By the way, for the record, I don't believe CEOs should be rewarded for stock price going up.
No, I agree.
I do not believe in that.
100%
That's the funny
agree.
part. However, in the relative to the conversation,
Yes.
we're talking about 65,000. It might be my numbers are wrong. The bottom line is, it's a lot. We're talking about you're focusing on the wrong thing. You're focusing on the wrong thing. I get the argument. Hey, why do they make 64 million? I don't like the fact that the board altered their compensation so they could get the bonus. That's stupid. That is not good corporate management. I hate that
And
stuff.
that's setting a terrible
It's a
precedent.
different conversation altogether, though. It's a very common theme I do. I always tell people when they argue poorly, you're arguing the wrong point. It is a good point. Don't argue that point. The corporate compensation thing should be argued on a different level altogether. 64 million is a lot of money, but if we're really worried about that, come on, guys. We're talking about 50 cents per hour of. I look at it going. And by the way, the $3 per hour thing, I think it was a higher jump than that. Because if you think about it, minimum wage went from $8 to $15.
Yeah, I think it was probably higher than that because they're paying like an average now of 15, and I have to believe it was probably closer to 10 before.
So these estimations, there's estimations. The $3 an hour thing, maybe it's $2 an hour. The bottom line is if it's $2 an hour, it's still, how much is that? $230 million versus the 65. That is a valid point they're making. And I don't like the fact that they change. But at the end of the day, you cannot argue that higher wage prices will not lead to higher costs for everybody. Who does that affect? Do you think it affects me if my burrito is 4% more?
No.
It does not affect me one bit. Does it affect Nate?
Yeah, he's only making $20 an hour or something.
Well, that's still pretty good for him, if you ask me. I mean, he's a college kid.
His friends are making 7. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know what's 7, but I look at it saying, hey, this is the reality of the world. We can sit there and complain all we want about low minimum wage. At some point in the future, we'll be complaining about $15 not being enough. And I say that future is probably 3 or 5 years away. Even though the minimum wage has doubled. It's funny, I have some small business owners who said that. There's one small business owner I know who posted on Facebook recently and said, minimum wage has been too low for too long. Guess how many employees he has?
Go on.
One.
Ah.
One employee, and guess what? I won't say what he does. That person probably makes $25 an hour. He'll have to pay more for that person at some point, because that person's gonna be like, why do I make $25 an hour when a guy who like literally picks up trash on the street makes $15 an hour? It doesn't seem, before when they were making 10 and she was making 25, it made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's just gonna drive up costs. If you don't believe that, I don't know what to tell you. You also probably don't believe the sky is blue, even though you look up at it and go, that's blue. You know what I mean? It is what it is. It's just, that's the reality of it. I don't know any economist who can argue that increasing labor costs do not increase costs overall.
Yep.
It's just a component of everything. And at the end of the day, they still have margins to hit. They still have investors to pay attention to. And you can sit there and claim all you want that, well, that person already has a lot of money. Well, then give them an incentive to go do more. If you're going to take away their money, they have no incentives, they'll shut down their business.
One of the arguments I saw in a comment was, Paul, in our last video, and maybe you can address this, is the idea that someone simply said that if a human being in America is working 40 hours a week, they should not be living under the poverty line.
So let's look at somebody who sits there and says, if you're living in Bangladesh, you look at us going, you spoiled brat. It's all relative. Just like somebody who makes $40,000 a year, by the way, they're not living under poverty, but as long as they're making $40,000 a year, like, oh my God, you make $400,000. Seth, you make a lot more than you did in your first job.
Sure.
But you still have issues. You still sit there and go, oh, what about this? What about this? You're gonna make more money. This is per capita income by country. What's the number one?
United States.
United States, all the way up here. The average is $3,500. Look at all these countries below $3,500. Do you look pretty rich compared to everybody, pretty much everybody?
Yeah, pretty much everybody.
You look really, really rich from here down. So other people would sit there and say,
These
you're
aren't
being a brat.
Yeah, these aren't third world countries, Paul. I mean, this is Japan, Spain, Italy,
It's just the way it is, guys. So whenever we sit there and compare things, I would also sit there and urge you, what do the poor have in this country versus other countries? Cell phones, TVs, cars, sneakers, all these things that if you go to, I always joke with people and say, I'm from Iraq, I was born there. If you're in Iraq and you look at two people, you know which one's rich and which one's poor.
Yeah.
Based on our outfits here, you probably couldn't be able to tell. I mean, maybe a little bit, but I usually wear shorts and this Nike dry fit. You can't really tell. There's a lot of people who make a lot less money than me who dress better than I do. That's the thing. It's like when we talk about these things, it's like, oh, it's just for lifestyle. It's like, okay, but let's also keep it relative. The thing about extra, because you know what the next argument's going to be? Why are so many jobs going overseas? Well, you wanted more income. At some point, it's got to go overseas when you want more income. Because when you want more income and the cost of goods are too much, you got to go overseas where the cost is a lot less. Because look at China. This is where China is. $1,780 per year. 1/10 of, I mean, it's just like, it's tough. When the US is, I don't get this meaning. I don't know how this is right, but I don't think that's exactly it. Maybe it's based on a certain year. Because look right here, the countries with the highest median incomes are right here. United States at 43,500. I mean, I just look at this going, guys, what are we doing here? What the heck are we doing here?
Complaining.
Yeah, well, that's household. That's what it is. Here it's household income. So this is household.
I think at the end, it is very telling when you do say the words like, and if you want to go be the CEO of Chipotle, you have to go do that, and it might take 20 years.
And it might never happen.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. But I will tell you this, like, it's an unfortunate fact, but people want to be paid more, and then they say, and then I'll do more work. No, go earn your wage. Go earn yourself an increase. You can control how much you make tomorrow. Show up on time, get more training, get more educated, you will earn more money. It is not somebody else, it's not a business owner's job to do that for you. The business owner's job is when you work for them to make your work environment as great as possible and provide you training to give them more incentives. If they have no incentives to do that for you, why would they ever do it? You're not going to get out of bed to go to work with incentives. Darnell was complaining to me the other day.
Talk about Darnell's incentive for people being on time.
Darnell gave an incentive.
A friend of yours who owns a tree company.
You show up on time, I will give you bonuses.
Show up on time.
Show up on time. Something you're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
And this isn't just, and by the way, if somebody says, oh, they just have the wrong employees, do me a favor. You've never gone and posted a job and said, come interview. I will tell you right now, I don't care what the job is, you'll be lucky to get 50% of the people who called you and said, I want a job, scheduled the interview at a certain time, you'll be lucky to get 50% to show up. So when you want more money, show up to work on time, get more training, make yourself absolutely necessary to you. But whenever I go teach at my high school, you know what I say to them? Be the person your boss relies on. You will always have a job. Because when times are tough, they want the people next to them that they rely on. That's how you get more money.
Well, Paul, the moral of the story is, and you've been teaching me this for a while, is if the two options are work really hard for 20 years or just complain on Facebook about not making enough money, this one's a lot easier to do, and that's what we're hearing.
And the squeaky wheel gets the oil first. And that's what we're doing right now. It's the squeaky wheel. But guess what, guys? You can't complain later. If you're up to me, you want $50 minimum wage? Fine. You know what the $50 minimum wage looks like? There's that joke, what $15 minimum wage looks like. This is what $15 an hour minimum wage looks like. This is what $20 an hour minimum wage. You can't get mad at companies that then go and do this. Great. You can't get mad at them.
It's cheaper.
It's cheaper. And they want to keep costs down so that people will buy more from them.
Yep.
It is cheaper to do this. Is that rude? That's rude, but how rude? Why is it more rude to do this than to sit there and say, give me more just because I want more?
Yeah.
Why is it more rude? This is very controversial. I get that. And probably half the people watching this going, what a jerk. I'm a jerk then. But at the end of the day, you have a business, you have investors, your capital. It's so funny, but the same people who are saying I'm a jerk, tell them, hey, go pay for it. I'm not doing that. Well, why? Just go help. That's not my responsibility. So you're okay with making my money your responsibility? No, sorry, not going to happen. This is what 15, 20, 30, this is what higher minimum wage looks like. I'm okay with this because guess what? Over time, just because jobs are eliminated doesn't mean they're eliminated forever.
That's true.
There are other things that happen. Industries evolve. We're becoming more of a service-oriented country and not manufacturing. That's just fine. But just remember, as time goes on, more costs will have repercussions. Don't be upset when they happen.
That's our take. Argue in the comments below, and I will not be watching them anymore. So, but yeah, take a little thumbs up on the way out. Join the Patreon. We'll talk about it. Thanks, guys. See you. Bye.